Finally. This is Diana Paulo. Pauro. And she has been my most sought after guest to not be on the show. I think this is the 11th episode of the Design Build Show, and I've finally gotten her here. So this is quite an accomplishment for me.
I'm finally here. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's an honor. You know, I've been wanting you to be on the show for so long because you're our first woman guest, first of many, and you're also, you know, your background, you're Argentinian.
Yeah.
You were trained as an architect in Argentina.
Yes.
And in speaking with you, you know, this concept of design build, like, does it even exist there?
Yeah.
It
it's
does.
The mainstream.
Okay. Do they say this is design build, or do they say, or is it just like the architect is design build?
Yeah, the architect is, you know, by definition a design builder. It's not just a designer.
Yeah, right. You take the words out of my mouth, yeah. Because, you know, the purpose of this show is to raise the awareness of design build as a way to get back to the initial root of the word architect. If the architect today in America held its original root, which the derivation of the word architect is master builder, there wouldn't need to be design builder, right? Which is the way it is in Argentina.
Yeah, we cannot afford to just be a designer.
Right. Yeah. Why is that?
Well, because we have to be very grounded to reality and what actually our client needs or our beneficiary needs.
Yeah.
So whenever you are designing, if you don't do it thinking of how it's going to be built,
right,
you're just doing pipe dreams.
Yeah.
You're just like, you know, designing a cloud of nothing. You know, you have to be able to think of how it's going to be made true. You know, you have to think about how is the end product going to be.
Yes.
And also
execution, like, because that is your product, right? It's not the paper, the plans on the paper.
If you design something with our inflation rate and you're not thinking about how is that going to be affected in a year, you're fired. You're fired by your client like
so
that.
The practicality of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas here in America, you know, there's this luxury of being wasteful, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
You've said it.
So give us a little more intro of yourself in terms of your background as an architect. You know, I know you mentioned 6 years of schooling there, right?
Yeah, 6 years actually, because I was working, it was 8 years for me.
Oh, wow.
I worked my whole career like a full job. I went to the National School of Architecture.
Okay.
It will be the National University, which one is free, universal, like anybody can go there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you don't get on the depths that you get in here.
Yeah.
Which is like
It's a
crazy
good deal.
for me. For me, it's crazy. I mean,
It's a rip-off, man.
Yes.
It's a complete rip-off here.
I had an education, first-rate education with like amazing teachers, and like for here that it's the equivalent of having a master's in architecture and urban planning, because my degree is also urban planning, and my whole training had been like, I don't know, I'm very proud of our national system of education. And coming here and seeing how a lot of people is just like struggling with paying their debts and, you know, getting an internship to have the training that school have to give you.
Right.
Like the fact that they don't really have real experience on construction until they are out of school.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah, so talk about that. How was that integrated into your education?
Well, we have a lot of classes that are construction, but then we go a lot to sites, and we do we work with communities. I was part of a team that it was like affordable housing team, and we would work with vulnerable and at-risk communities, and we would not design a whole project that they could afford. Like people
like you had to think with that, right? Because you had to be accountable for that, right?
Yes, and because it's usually an architect, even if it's in like public work, you know. But even for residential, you have all your design decisions have an impact. It's there was this teacher that I loved how he said he used to say that the pencil in the paper is not innocent. Whenever
I love that. I love that.
Whenever you're deciding, it has an impact socially, economically, emotionally. So that we're not just like designing for a magazine. We're being part of people's lives, being just designing their street or designing their homes.
It puts it in the frame of reference, right? It makes you. It's not like you're just drawing as an artist. Like that then translates into a physical form, which people spend. People are always in buildings, right? So
we are always. We cannot escape from spaces that make us, and like the repercussion of our work has such a depth, and it's just the primal work of a human being is how to make themselves a home, a shelter. So it's just like it becomes us. So if you are like doing that without thinking of how you're doing it to be actually built,
right?
It's like,
what's the impact going to be, right? Yeah, I mean, buildings are built other ways, right? Through separate architect. Then it gets bid out, and during that period, they might go back and get redesigned, right? Because it's too much, and they have to value engineer the project because they weren't thinking with cost, and now they need the assistance from the build people who are going to build it to be like, no, here's what you need, here's what we need to do, right? But it's not efficient, right? It's so they do happen, but it's a much more inefficient process.
And you can see that in a lot of public work that they did first like an ideas challenge, and like somebody wins and they have this great idea, but then when they start, it was beautiful on the renderings, and then they start bidding, it's like
it's not feasible,
and then it becomes this mediocre, half product.
When did you become, being in that environment for most of your life, right? When did you start to become aware of the differences, like between where the architect and what that meant in Argentina versus America?
Well, I've only been in the US for a little bit over 2 years. That's quite crazy, actually.
Oh wow, that is.
I've seen before in school there is still in public work there's still a little bit of that, just selling an idea from an architect and the bidding project.
Separation,
But that's only just because a lot of the firms, they cannot really, do the whole process. And I never felt like really that was my part of the industry.
Didn't make sense.
No. That's why I got in Argentina with affordable housing, because that's like in the public environment, that's the design bill.
Okay.
You cannot, you are always short of money.
Right.
And everything is a high priority, and you cannot never promise a vulnerable family to do a project that they are not going to actually have. So you have to be very aware. And I think that really helped me coming here. In the US, you have like tons of other technologies and access to all these little tools to do very specific things that we don't have. So we actually are like a little bit MacGyver as an architect too, like creating things with the most basic materials. But here you have so much, and you could like do so many things that you have to actually be also like very realistic of what falls into your clients. And our work, it's just really helps me to, gauge more what we should be presenting to each client.
Being part of a design build firm.
Yes. Yeah. And being here, and now I see a lot of people having the other process, and I'm like, are you crazy just working as an architect?
Oh my God.
This is just the roots. This is the actual way. Whenever you think about it, I don't know anybody that have gone to just a, like the standard architect in the U.S. process and then to a contractor and being happy.
Yeah.
That's why the whole myth of the contractor is gonna rip off my head with their budget.
I think a lot of people here are ignorant. Like in America, we've been educated to believe that that's the way it's always been. The majority of people I speak to, when I tell them that, go back 100 years, 125 years, the architect and builder were the same guy or gal.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, no way.
Yeah.
They've taken the past 125 years and made it seem like that's the way it's been for the majority of history. And they go back in history, even like guys like Vitruvius, the Roman architect. He was a design builder. You read his book, The 10 Books of Architecture. He's talking about how you need to have, the knowledge of building and swinging a hammer, as well as the creative, artistic, philosophical aspect of the job. And when architects of today go back, they just take that, and that's what. And it's like we've been duped, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you said before, it's the luxury of just like being able to be wasteful. It's the luxury of having an over industrialized, you can get anything from the market here. You can access whatever, and it's not going to really impact. Vitruvius, he would have like real problem if he would order the wrong stone or whatever. It's just like every decision had an impact that
totally.
that you cannot afford it.
Yeah.
Here, just especially in the last 50 years, the US was like, in such a wealth that it didn't impact anything.
Yeah.
Like,
I love the way you come from it, because you come from a place where it's like you didn't have that luxury, right?
Yeah.
Like I just kind of became aware of it because I was trained as an architect. And I was ignorant. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I just knew when I was then trying to practice as an architect, I didn't know what the I was doing. Like I was like, I'm like, hold on. So I'm gonna draw this, and this guy's gonna build it. But I've never built anything.
Yeah.
I've never stepped much of a foot on a construction site. That just didn't make sense to me, But I love the fact that it's this necessity, right? Because and that's the thing about it. It just makes sense when and it's very easily people when you do tell them, like, hey, the derivation of the word architect is master builder. The majority of history, the guy who designed it, built it. They're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And it's I love when a client is looking at hiring us versus an architect.
Yes.
I'm like, that client's either got to have money to kill, right? And just loves this architect's aesthetic.
Yeah.
Or is naive in the idea that they're gonna have a competitive bidding and that's somehow gonna give them the best price, when in reality that's really it's very problematic to go down that road.
It is, and it's but usually a person that already had experience of that is not gonna keep on going. It's just And I think it's design build in the U.S. is just, getting stronger. Maybe just that's a perception.
Yeah, so talk about that in the future. What do you foresee in the future?
Well, if you think about globally, right now, even with the new tariffs and everything, we're not gonna be able to afford to have the same systems.
Yeah.
And the speed of the consuming process that this country had is not going to hold up. It's unsustainable. We already are feeling it in every single country, and it's already waking up a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's just, it naturally will have, if it's not by a crisis and a shock on people, it will be just out of wisdom and realizing that we have to be more conscious about how we use everything. It's even our wood, how much waste do we use in every single cut we make? How do we, actually, the economy is gonna also drive that back.
Yeah.
we're too many people in this world to be like, you know, just one country using that many resources.
Right,
that,
right.
You know.
Yeah. So do you? I mean, I've thought about this a good amount. Like the educational system here,
Yeah.
it needs to change in
Yes.
terms of how an architect is trained. It needs to become more of a holistic, complete education.
Definitely.
And I wonder if, in just talking to you, just being aware, like in other countries, the architect is a design builder.
Yeah.
Whereas the architect here is more a designer.
Yeah.
If who's going to win out? You know, like whether the architect, like that person or that entity that takes on the full scope of a project is going to be called an architect or a design builder.
Design builder will become again the architect.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's a doubt, and also it's just like.
So we shouldn't try to go back.
To be just an architect?
Yeah.
No.
Or like reclaim, but what about the architect?
Oh,
because
as a
I
name?
think that's like an inspirational
As
thing.
a name?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, only here you have that thing of just the architect being only a designer.
Right. Right.
The architect and the rest of the world is still design builder.
Yeah. So like American architect can, I think, reclaim their.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Yes, and also this is a good point about immigration. As an
Yeah.
immigrant Latina,
Yeah.
like the fact that we still can move and migrate and be part of what is the U.S.
Oh my gosh.
We just bring part of this knowledge we have.
Yeah, it infuriates me now too. We were talking a little bit about this over dinner, but we recently had an architect who moved from Minnesota. He had to transfer his license. The architect can't call himself an architect till it's transferred. The architect here today is a legal term, and it's the thing that annoys me is the architect today is really less than what, for example, the architect is where you are, and you're a great example of it. It just you move here, you can't call yourself an architect, right? But you are more qualified from personal experience. This woman is incredible at what she does. Clients love her. You know, she's just takes full ownership for a project, and I'd rather have you than any licensed architect I know. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I did want to just touch on a few other things. We talked about how you've been trained in engineering. Like you were responsible for doing the calculations, structural calculations. You also just mentioned you were trained in urban planning.
Yes.
And that goes back to the more like complete, like holistic role of an architect, because traditionally an engineer, that didn't come around until the 1800s. Urban planning probably later.
Which I'm crazy. Yeah, it's like mind blowing.
And the architect here in America shed their hat more, but it just validates the completeness of your education. The fact that I heard those things, because I've done a lot of research now on the history of this profession and how it's been perverted.
Yes.
And it was like, that's more, it's still like in Argentina, it's more the core, like real role is still there. It just shows me that.
You cannot design only just one building without thinking of community and how it impacts on the whole urban scale.
Mm-hmm.
And also you cannot think about a building without what's the structure.
Yeah.
It's just like, makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So first off, I have this thanks to Deanna. I think part of the reason she never wanted to be on my show is because first she was just like, no, you need to work on your interviewing skills. You say and like too much. So I worked on that. Now I had a set list of questions.
I'm very impressed of how you improve
thank you.
The whole
Thank you.
setup, and
Appreciate that.
it is really hard to do.
I think I was great from the beginning, but
well, you were great about like just persevering on educating people about what's design build.
Yeah.
And non-stopping.
I had a lot of room to figure out what.
But I'm proud that you are doing these and just springing up and learning on the way too.
Yeah.
Because that means also that you understand that everything is a learning curve, even like doing design build and understanding it is too. So.
I'm so passionate about it. You know, it is going to change the world for the better.
Yeah.
Like getting in design build as the methodology, getting it in the school so a person is not just trained as a designer, but trained as a construction manager.
A complete architect.
Yeah, that is really going to help the world. I've mentioned this a few times now, but like Elon Musk, these guys are like going to Mars. Like, are you going to hire a guy who's just like be like, oh, here's the design. I think this will work out there. No, right?
No.
Like the design build is completely the future. And so you are my first woman on the show. Thank you very much.
My honor.
And so interior design, I'm just going to bring this up because interior design is, might be thought of as more of like the woman is an interior designer. The man is an architect, or traditionally, right?
Yeah, those are very harmful stereotypes.
Yes. So whereas you have you are an architect to me, and you have a complete, mindset about that. So, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, on stereotypes, just to put genders on any kind of roles, it's just like completely wrong, and it's just like they are outdated. It's just like, and I do appreciate a lot the work of interior design. I have right now one of my good friends here. She's an interior designer, and she's like, I'm amazed about her quality of work. But also being an architect, a female architect, it's usually like even in Argentina. Argentina is crazy machista.
Oh, okay.
And it will be always like saying like, oh, you're too soft for architecture, go to interior design, and that's like stupid.
I agree.
Like, but as a female architect, it had been always challenging on, being in construction sites.
Yeah, what was that like?
Oh, well.
Going to construction sites, I was just thinking about that. Because you did that a lot, right?
Yeah. I was. I would do being an architect and a PM of all, and going to job sites. I did use in that moment the fact that I was smoking tobacco just to make the builders to feel that I'm like there and being part. But I had to work triple as hard and to be like so on top of details. They wouldn't forgive me from any kind of error because they would start already saying, oh, because you're a woman, you don't have a head for this.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of like
that must have been a challenge, right?
It was a challenge. Gratefully, since I've been younger, I had like great mentors, and they were, they never did the gender a problem. Since I was in high school, I started working for an architect he was actually designing and building the offices for my parents for their business, and I was learning from him so much, and he never even.
That was your first job?
Yeah.
Cool.
I would have to go to site, and there was this master builder, Napoleon was his name, and he never saw me for a girl. He just like he saw me for somebody wanting to learn how how concrete worked, how to put a brick over a brick. And
did you do that? Did you he had you do some work?
Yeah. And bending bending rebars and just like mixing stuff.
That's awesome.
That's hard. It's harder than lumber. I'm sorry, but it is harder.
Yeah. I've never done it, but I can imagine. I think that is the way it should start. Yeah. Man or woman, it should start in the field.
Yes.
Like you should have that field experience. And if you look at the derivation, the master architect, the guy started as an apprentice, then a journeyman, and then once he had mastered the full, scope, he could then direct people and say, hey, this is how you draw it, and be like, this is how you do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you feel like that is a barrier for women?
Well, definitely. It is a barrier because usually, how many women framers do you see?
Yeah. But do you need to actually? How much experience do you think you actually need to actually like, you know, laying it, cutting it versus just being on a site?
Yeah.
And seeing it? I wonder if that can fill the void, like just like seeing it, like like being there.
Yeah. Well, site visits and going and checking, it does help a lot. But it's not until you actually are like, you know, struggling with a bad design cabinet or a corner that is not, doesn't make sense until you are actually putting drywall in a non-plumb wall that you realize how it impacts. Kind of like the headaches of actually like finished carpentry or anything really makes you think about those stuff. If not, they get lost. I think everybody needs a little bit of shop
so
time.
it can be a barrier, but it's just get over it, just do it, right? Because you know, women can be amazing craftsmen and artisans.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
I know amazing builders.
Yeah, so it's just a stereotype, right? It's just a stipulation.
It is, and it's something that I also appreciate working with you guys because it's like never been an issue. I haven't felt really an issue of being a woman. I mean, I'm under 30.
Well, power to you, girl.
I'm under 30. I'm a Latina, an immigrant, and I'm already like in 1 year done so much work, and now I'm design director.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, if even in other places, even like just working that hard, I would have those opportunities, and that's something also, you know, that talks a lot about the company.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's my pleasure.
Nice.
You know, and we look.
Yes.
So if you're looking, it's not hard to see.
Yes.
And you're gonna keep rising on up because that's who you are, and you're amazing, and you know.
Thank you. Really
I love working with you. So.
Me too.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
All right.
Gracias.